by the time the summer's over, we'll have had the most use it's ever had in 30 years.
Wow.
Of course, we're doing ongoing landscape maintenance in the parks and parking lots. I spent a whole day in the rose garden, for example. All the hedges have been hit at least once. We didn't irrigate last summer. I took advantage of being lazy during COVID and didn't care. This summer, we turned the irrigation off for a few weeks. The water department asked us to because of, they weren't using the filtration plant yet. This year, the filtration plant is up and running, so the irrigation's back on. There's plenty of water, but we haven't really drawn out of the creek much in the last number of years, but we are now. I worked with Trevor to establish a dozen or so tree planting locations for this fall. We don't really plant much until rain season comes, October, but considering the trees that have been removed, this is all public trees, public rights of way or public property, and we have a substantial list, 12 or so sites, probably more than 20 trees will be going in, and I did one already and I've been irrigating it. We'll see it on Laurel Street. And finally, my highest count of purple martins at the Purple Martin House was 23, plus a bunch of babies sticking their heads out of their little boxes. And so I talked to a person I know who's a bird guy, and he said that when the conditions are correct, purple martins can have 2 hatches in a season rather than just one. So that's what happened. I think only a dozen showed up, then there was 23, and now there's still a handful of babies. So it's purple martin box is a success. You know, every year's better, and that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
We'll talk about the baskets. I think the baskets are going to be coming down.
Baskets look like shit, and the baskets are having a hard time. We got aphids and powdery mildew, and Joe's been working on them, and
it wasn't our best year with the baskets, let's just say that.
Yeah, and they're not coming down yet, but they might be down earlier than mid-September like they usually are.
Climate wasn't the best for them this year, so we'll try again next year.
Speaking of the bandstand, do we have a definite decision yet? Do you know about whether the concert's going to be on tonight or off?
I have no idea about tonight. No, that Thursday is kind of that.
Paul Duber.
Isn't that Paul Duber's gig? And
Yeah, I'll email Paul right now.
I don't know. I assume it's going
I
to.
think it's through Taliban Arts. So, well,
I'm sorry.
It's Paul
through
Duber.
Taliban Arts program.
Bob, Paul Duber does the concerts on Thursday.
No, it's not a Taliban Arts concert.
I'm mistaken.
They've had 2
Okay,
so far.
yeah, I'll check with Paul. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Oh, is there more? Okay, I'm getting used to the Zoom delay again. Thank you. That's great. Great update, and yeah, some really positive notes. I'm glad the pickleball striping has been so far positive report, and
Yeah, when you drive by, you can't even see the pickleball stripes, but if you want to play pickleball, they're perfect. But they're so innocuous. It's really, they did a great color. It's like light gray. But anyway, check them out sometime.
And has anybody played pickleball?
Oh, yeah, they have.
Good.
Yeah, there's been a bit.
Good.
I've had some phone calls with people asking, do you guys have pickleball? I'm like, guess what? We have it now. So,
And people are bringing their own nets.
yep.
Good.
So,
That's not a problem. And that's the,
Okay.
say we don't have nets. Like I got some in my car, so we travel with them.
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
That's great. That's great news after our discussions earlier in the year. That's nice to hear. So thank you for that.
well,
Great to
some
hear
of
from
the-
the Martins.
some of the regular tennis players who had some concerns about pickleball, they were the first ones to bring a net and play pickleball.
Go
Good.
here.
Good.
Okay, good update. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Right-of-way tree removals. Any questions or comments on the applications we have in? Okay, and I just wanted to propose something for consideration in the coming year. You know, we have these applications every month that we look at, and the Parks Committee is, we also serve as the tree board as part of our role. And I just thought it might be a good reminder, review, or possibly new information for newer folks, that in the coming year, we just take time in one meeting to review the role of the tree board. What is its role? How does it function? How does it function in the Parks Committee? Just kind of what's that relationship, so we can have a little more active sense of that. So I wanted to just put that out there as a possible topic.
I would appreciate that. I wasn't even conscious of that. I may have known it at some moment before, but it didn't stick with me. So I would like to have that.
I would too. That would be great.
It'll just maybe make that connection between that and the applications as they're coming in. And if there are questions, just a thing we could maybe do periodically just to refresh. So, okay, great. Well, we'll just stick a pin in that, but something to consider for next year. All right, community grants. I let the council know at their last meeting. I just followed up from our discussion, let them know that we're in the process of addressing, you know, we had a good initial discussion, identified some things that we want to continue to talk about, and that we would be interested in having a joint meeting with council, work session later in the fall, at which time we can bring whatever we might propose to council and discuss that. I'm thinking perhaps in November, and that will still give a month or two before the applications go out. We identified several things to consider last time, and I want to see if people have any further thoughts on that now. But before we do that, I just wanted to propose as maybe a first step to continuing that discussion. If everyone, I think, has, or Kelsey can get you a copy of the current application. And then between now and September, if everybody can just take a look at that in detail, I think that will be a good refresher for all of us to continue the discussion from. We'll have a chance to see, you know, what are the criteria that people are being asked to meet. We certainly look at that, but I think just having a refresher of that, as well as the things that the application more generally is considering. I think that it certainly relates to some of the discussion we've had, and I'd like us all to be very current on the particulars of that and actually just have it right in front of us as we're talking. I think it would be a good reference point. So is that agreeable to everybody? You can just take a look at that and then have it in front of you for our next meeting in September.
I'm guessing that that's something that wouldn't be hard to find on the city website, for instance. Presumably that's where the applicants go and find it.
Right, and we have it in our packets from all of the, I mean, you know, the applications are what we've been reviewing. So we have the current one. I would just like us to look at it and have it right handy when we're not for any particular group, just the actual application questions themselves. So we can discuss that. Yeah, and I think that is readily available. So so does that sound like a good place to start next month with that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And any other thoughts or questions, anything that would make sense to address today related to the community grants discussion, or that we want to have in mind prior to that, kind of picking that thread up next month?
So I have a question about when the notification to the award recipients will go out. I've had lots of people asking me.
The checks were cut on the 13th of this month, so they should be in their hands
Soon. Okay,
by
great.
today, hopefully.
Okay,
depending
great.
on how quickly the mail service operates.
Good. Thank you.
Great. Anything else related to the process, either this year or our discussion that we'll be getting back into. Okay, so I'd just like to propose then that we pick up the more in-depth discussion next month and allow a fair chunk of time for us to do that. If we have any proposals to take to council related to the process, that we be refining those in October, and then would request, if possible, that we could meet with council at their work session in November or possibly December. But I think November would give us a little bit more time in terms of getting everything lined up for the applications next year. Does that seem like a reasonable timeline? Or anything folks have to add to that? Okay, yeah, Bruce.
For the record, Bruce St. Dennis, City Manager. I'd like y'all to think about the potluck. The potluck is not something that we can do legally because we don't have the kitchen facilities, all that sort of thing. I don't know if anybody's ever going to complain about it, but we really wouldn't have a good defense. So if there's, the city can buy pizzas, we can buy something else, we can bring food in that way, I think. But, I'm not gonna fall on my sword over this, but it is something that we're kind of on notice that we're probably in violation of several health issues or regulations. So,
And traditionally,
Oh,
we have the potluck in September, and I don't think with the COVID
yeah,
situations right now, I don't think it's a healthy
right.
thing to have, even though it's one of my favorite events. But I think we have to delay it again. I mean, not have it again.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
All right.
Yeah, agreed. And maybe we can talk about, now, is that something that we can just agree as a group that makes sense to defer the potluck again this year? Do we need to have a formal vote on that?
I don't think a formal vote is needed, just general consensus is fine.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts on that? We in agreement, we can defer.
Yeah, I would be uncomfortable with having a large group meeting. I'm really, I think I've been a major proponent of potlucks around here. And I really look forward to getting back to them, but not right yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, and if anybody has ideas for a virtual acknowledgement or some way that we can, just celebrate the recipients and in some other way this year that kind of comports with the COVID situation, please bring that in, and otherwise we'll look to next year.
Can we, this would involve some work or whatever on somebody's part, but could we get together a statement for the Gazette for them to, it seems like they're always scratching around for something to put it in there, and I think that this would be an appropriate thing for them to publish.
Thoughts on that? More specifically, just an acknowledgement, like a statement of acknowledgement, or?
Well, that like some kind of a statement. Maybe it would be a context for the. I'm just completely making this up as I go along. For the groups to put in a statement, what they do and what they're going to do with the money, and a documentation of how much money they're getting.
Any discussion or thoughts on that? Okay, well, let's.
I hadn't thought about this at all. So
Yeah,
as I said, I'm just making it up on the fly.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's the idea of just, having some, generating some ideas. And so let's kind of put that in the hopper and see if that sparks an interest for anybody who might want to follow up with that or something similar. So just be thinking if there's something that comes to mind that we might do in the fall period sometime. that we can
Mhm.
safely. Let's come back to that with any ideas. I'm just looking at my note here. Okay, anything else related to grants? Discussion. Okay, so I will, Kelsey, I think maybe if you could just send a copy of the current application to everybody, and then we'll have it to review next time, or to have with us next time. That would be great.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, Heritage Trees Program. So last time we identified folks were gonna take some steps looking into different aspects of how we might move forward, language for an ordinance, the criteria for the trees, the application. So I'll just, maybe we can just go around and hear anything that folks have discovered, or questions that have arisen, and talk about next steps as we go. So who would like to start in on what they've been working on?
So Stacy and I were in charge of the application, and we've been thinking a lot about it, but we have nothing to show for it right now. But we promise we'll have something at the September meeting.
Okay, great.
Good.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Just barely.
Betty.
Can you hear
Volume's
me now?
low.
Can you hear me now?
The volume's a little bit low.
Yeah, I'm gonna just try to take off these.
Can't hear you well now.
Michael,
Oh, there you go. Okay,
Better.
there you go.
good. Okay, so you can hear me now? All right. Well, I've been working on the tree heritage criteria, and I'm going to be working with Les, but I haven't been able to get in touch with him this time. But I did talk to Jan, who brought this heritage tree, has been working on the heritage tree project. And she was saying that we should just look at what's going on in Portland, their heritage tree program, in which I did. And it's a very simple criteria. And I sent Jelaine a blurb about it, but it's basically the size of the tree, the age of the tree, whether the tree has horticultural value, and does it have any historical association. And for instance, the wedding tree that we used to have in Cannon Beach, which was a very important tree for a lot of us. So those are the basic criteria that we could use, and we can expand or change those, but that's the basics. So we can work from there, I think.
Great. One question I have is, did you see anything, or did anybody in looking at other programs see anything about what, if a heritage tree is proposed on a private property, are there things that the owner agrees to, or kind of what does it entail for the owner of a tree? And I don't know if you ran across that or not.
I read a little bit. It was the owner does have to sign a statement that they will be kind of responsible for care of the tree. And I think that might be an issue. Another thing that came up was that the tree has to be visible, easily visible, so that you don't have to walk through their yard or something. There's through an alleyway or some way that you can see the tree. But I can go more in depth in that. I wanted to touch base with Les first before I wrote up a statement.
Great. And this actually, if I can just pause here, I'm going to come back around to how we might kind of easily connect when we're partnering on projects. We don't generally have a phone list or anything like that, and we need to be very careful of our rules about having serial conversations. But if there are two people working on something, we want to make sure that we can connect with each other in a way that makes sense. So we'll come back around to that because that may come up more as we're kind of dividing up these tasks. So thanks. Anything else folks have on? Thank you for that, Betty. And I don't know if the folks have questions regarding that or thoughts on criteria stuff.
Jelaine, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Les. I don't know if you knew I was here. I dialed in a few minutes late. Hi, Betty.
Hi,
Thanks for
Les.
reaching out. I did see that. We've just gotten back into Cannon Beach. But I have done some similar work looking at other programs, and Betty did a great job of kind of summarizing what I've seen. There are tons of them. I would mention one thing I found though, Betty. It's a master's thesis out of the University of Hawaii that went and took I think over 70 heritage tree programs and it did a really nice job of sorting through them, looking for the commonalities, talking about the details. I will provide you that link if you'd like to take a look at it. It's way too busy. I think a simple one is better for us, and Portland may be perfect, but I just wanted to throw that out and then let you know, Jelaine, that I was here.
Great. Thank you. Great to see you and great to have you here.
Thank you, Les. And I just have a side note also, living in Hawaii, we do have a strong heritage tree policy there. And there was a piece of property that had beautiful, beautiful old trees. Only 3 of them were heritage trees. And when the new owner came in, they tore down all the trees and they couldn't tear down the heritage trees, which actually was a blessing. But when he tore down the trees, then within the year, his whole property slipped down the hill. So anyway, trees are of value, and and I will be reading that report. Thanks, Les.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. Let's see. So we had the application, the criteria, ordinance. Bob, did you have a chance to take a look at or have thoughts about that piece, language on the ordinance?
No. I will make a strong note to myself to do that. This was on the proposed ordinance, or I don't even remember what I promised to do.
Yeah, well, so as we're dividing up the kind of the tasks to move forward to establish this heritage tree program, one of the first things that we'll want to do is propose an ordinance that establishes the program. And Bruce, you can correct me if I misunderstand, but I think that is just a simple, that would just be simple language establishing the program as a city program, and also identifying the roles of the different people with oversight for the program. So for example, the Parks Committee is going to operate as the language is escaping me right now, but we would be fielding the applications, reviewing the applications, and then submitting them to council for approval. So the ordinance language is really kind of, I think, where we would start. I think it can be fairly simple, but looking at possibly other examples so we can move forward with that and then establish the basis. Bruce, did I get that right?
Yes. My only comment is, I'm not sure if it would be done by resolution or by ordinance, but somehow the council will take an action on it. It'll lay out the parameters.
Okay, great. But the content and the language would be similar for both of those, for either a resolution or an ordinance?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and then what would...
An ordinance has more teeth to it than what a resolution does. So if we're going to get into penalties, all those sorts of things, that would probably need to be an ordinance for that program. But if it's how we're going to organize ourselves around an effort to preserve heritage trees, it would probably be a resolution. Saying, by gosh, this is what we're gonna do.
Okay, so if I understand you, an ordinance then is really saying that the city supports this. I mean, both of them would say the city supports it, but the ordinance is really establishing this as a program that that is backed up and is part of the city code then.
If there are parts of the program that have require the city to use their powers, for example, for enforcement or something like that, then it would have to be written into the code. If it's a voluntary program that we are supporting, then it would probably be done by resolution.
Okay, I'd like to open this up for discussion. You know, I think yeah, I have some thoughts about that, but I'd like to hear from other folks.
So Jelaine, this is Les again. Thinking back to your question before about owner responsibility, some of the things that I've seen would require a ordinance. There's typically protection for the tree, has to have some kind of city approval before they can prune, and certainly before the tree could be removed. But I've also seen requirements for extended spacing requirements. Some of the things I've read said root damage from nearby construction has led to the demise of a large number of heritage trees. So there are things in there that I think need the teeth of a ordinance. Just my 2 cents.
Probably that's something that could be coordinated with our present tree ordinance, because we've got, I'm not sure that it works 100% of the time, but we've got requirements that are pretty specific about if somebody's got a construction project planned, they have to have an analysis of how far out the roots are going to be. And if they go under where the construction's going on, they have to institute protections and so forth and so on. That's for any tree. So probably want to coordinate any ordinance with what we've already got.
Yeah, let me just tell you that, you know, when somebody builds a house and there's tree protection set up, there still is a possibility of damaging the root system without them even knowing about it. So just be aware of that. I mean, these roots go
Thanks, Trevor.
all over the place, and most of the time the contractor doesn't even know they've hit it. They think it's from a tree that they've already taken down on their property to build their house. So we see these effects, you know, months later after the house is complete.
Well, I think, you know, this speaks to the importance of being able to support the designation with both specific requirements, and that you know, the public can rely on the fact that if a heritage tree is given that designation, that there are going to, that all possible efforts will be made to protect that tree and to sustain it in a healthy way. I think that's the purpose of having a heritage tree program. I think it's all too easy for, you know, a well-intended program without any teeth to get overridden, depending on the circumstances. And I would be really concerned about that possibly happening. So I would also support an ordinance. Is there anybody else want to weigh in on this, or more discussion on that?
I think that the decision on whether or not it's going to be a resolution or an ordinance will depend on what's written into it. And again, if there are penalties, or if somebody says that I want this tree to be a heritage tree, and that's binding on subsequent owners, that sort of thing, then I think probably would be an ordinance. But I don't recall that as part of the discussion. But what will happen is that whatever you put together will go to Ashley, and then she will decide if it's an ordinance or a resolution.
I have a question, maybe to Les or somebody else. In researching programs, is there any indication whether historically having a heritage tree on your property has typically had the effect of either increase or decreasing the value of the property. I can imagine that if one of the trees on our lot was designated a heritage tree, and if we were selling it sometime in the future, that we would be able to point with pride to that and ask a little more. But on the other hand, somebody might say, well, that's constraining what I can do with the property.
So I think we've raised some good questions for consideration here. Let's hold these. Please be thinking about other considerations. Bob, if you can look at some simple language for an ordinance that would establish the Heritage Tree Program, designate the role for the Parks Committee and the City Council in administering it. And then I think we can do some more research on anything else that might need to be included, or how that language would comport with the current tree or ordinance that we have. Les, did you have a comment here?
I was just going to respond to Bob. I haven't seen that, but I will make a point to look for some evidence if I can find it.
Thanks, Les. And I apologize for dropping the ball on this. I will put it in all caps on my to-do list and get going on it.
Great. I think, well, we're all just kind of getting some background information here, and so we're in a good place to move forward. So thank you all for that. Any other comments on heritage trees before we move forward? Okay, great. Thank you. Annual projects. So we started a discussion of this last time. At the end, we're running out of time. So I wanted to return to this. Several folks expressed interest in kind of shepherding or being the point person for various projects, but I'd like to review kind of the first steps that we took last time, and then see if anybody has done perhaps started to research any of those or has any information to share with us, and then talk about next steps. So this is a little bit different approach than we've taken in the past, and so I think we'll partly be developing how we want to move forward, and depending on the project, the process might be different. So let's first of all just review. Actually, let's see. I think I've got. There it is. So I believe, and you can correct me if I have this incorrect, that Betty and Bob are going to look at signs, both the ECFR sign on the signs on the kiosk, on the gates, and in the downtown beach access points, and really wanting to make those look consistent and have a visual consistency with that and clarity, so that it's visually functions well, and folks know where to look for the information. And just to clarify, Betty, we had a conversation referring to a picture that was in some materials that we had in our previous discussion about signage from earlier in the spring. And that blue gate was, as far as I know, there are no blue colored gates. So I think that was just a generic photo depicting a gate signage. A kind of signage, but I don't believe that.
Actually, I looked at the picture and it actually says Ecola Creek Forest Reserve right on the top of it.
Oh, it does. That's interesting. So I don't remember there being a blue gate, but we can come back to that when we're looking.
Maybe it's gray, but in my picture it looks blue.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, gray makes sense. Okay, good. So Betty and Bob, we're going to look at signs. I know that Les has an interest in the road, following up on the roads. I think the decommissioning part is going to be addressed in the plan update, so that will be a bit further down the road. But we also did have the road renaming project. And then I also had Betty and Les as having expressed interest in the Blackberry pilot projects. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I know for sure I was interested in it. I think Les was too.
Is that right, Les?
I don't remember whether I said I'd be on a group for it, but I have an interest in
In the
that
pilot
and have opinions on it.
Well, of
Yeah,
course, and the idea here is not that the sole work on any of these projects. We're just identifying people who are going to be the point persons to kind of shepherd it along, to be bringing questions to the committee, to doing some of the research. So we'll be discussing all of these together and as we move forward. But I think we just want to have kind of spread out the managing the process a little bit amongst us. So Les,
Yep.
had you expressed interest in the Blackberry pilot project?
I did. I apologize. I'm struggling working remotely right now, but yes.
No worries. Okay, we're all doing the technical thing here.
Okay.
Okay. I think somebody maybe isn't muted, or that might be something happening in City Hall. I'm not sure. Okay, great. And then Barb and Stacy, I do not have a note here, but I don't know that we got all the way through. Were there particular projects you guys were interested in or had already spoken about?
I think Les and I were on the Beaver project.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, thank you. And then Stacy, I think you were had to head out because we were at the end of our time last time. Is there anything that you would like to, of those top 4 projects or so, that is of interest to you particularly?
How about road renaming?
Okay, great. So Stacy and Les can kind of shepherd that one along. All right. So as we're considering this, I'd like to just have some discussion about how we might move forward with next steps. Perhaps those of you who've done some research since the last meeting have some thoughts about what might be a next step to take on your particular project. I think with the blackberries, if we're talking about developing a pilot project, we'll need to have some discussion about where we want to target that, what the parameters of a pilot project of that kind would be, what's the information that we want to gather. So I think we've got some groundwork to do in that area, and that's a discussion that we haven't gotten into in detail. So more there. And Betty, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I do. Thinking about it, I was wondering if Kirk would be a person that I should be talking to, because he knows more about blackberries and eradication, I'm sure, than I do. And anyway, is there somebody on the staff or people that would be good for us to collaborate with, who are more expert than we are? So is that something could I just call them and ask them who they think I should talk to, or what are the protocols?
I think we have a couple of them right there.
Yeah, I know. I know. I just don't.
Yeah.
The
Well,
best way to contact.
Dr. Trevor.
Just call me.
Call Trevor and I'll be in touch with him.
Okay, great. Okay.
Okay, great. So it just briefly, I think, and I'm going back to some previous discussions that we've had as we were talking about having pilot projects on the blackberries. So I'm just going to do a little brief rehash there for some orientation. we had talked about, we are looking at mechanical and manual methods of blackberry control because chemical methods are prohibited in the reserve, and we want to keep that standard. We recognize that blackberries are part of the ecosystem there now. So we had discussed having very targeted, specific areas to get information about what methods are most effective in what types of areas for the purposes that we have. So I'll identify as an example a couple of them. Right now we have no data. We know that the city mows where they can get in and mow, like right along the sides of the road, which makes sense. That's one method of mechanical management. So I think getting data, how often do they do that? What seasons? What do they find helpful and not helpful in that regard? So that would be great information to get from staff and the work that's already happening. And they do that mow up by some of the gates also. There's there would be also a situation, let's say, where there's some thinning done and new trees coming up, so that an area that might have been opened up, we might target that as, okay, let's watch and see if blackberries come up. If they do, how many folks do we need to go out? How often to get on it right away and discourage those from growing until the trees can get larger and shade them out? That would be a second kind of scenario where we might be doing it with very different methods and different time frame. Another example could be if we are trying to establish beaver forage as part of one of the beaver restoration projects. If blackberries came into the mix there, that would be another opportunity to do some work and then get information, because I think what we wanted to do in this next 5 years is find out what's helpful, what works, what doesn't work, and what is already being done in this regard, so that when they do the next 5-year review, they'll have something to base it on rather than a kind of piecemeal approach. So that's my understanding of where we've been in our discussions. We decided, yes, we wanted to look at doing 1 or 2 of those pilot projects, and also just to start gathering data about what's already being done in that regard. So is that other folks understanding anything that I've missed or that people want to add to?
One of the things that you and I were talking about is, after it's been cleared, what kind of plants should we plant to keep them from growing back, because they don't like shade as much. So it would be nice to connect with somebody that knows what kind of plants would grow quickly and would be helpful for the environment. So that would be something that I'd like to look into too.
Yeah, so there may be areas where it's less about keeping the space free for example, young trees that have been planted. And there may be areas where if the blackberries come out, we could introduce a native plant that would help keep them controlled in a more natural way, but something that's native to the environment.
So I've got a location that's located right next to the gas station, up to the ECFR there. It's a great location to do a little project with blackberry removal. And also I can get my arborist to give us some recommendations for some planting in there. It's a good area that you can visually monitor without hiking a mile to get off the beaten. It's right there on the road, right next to the gas station. So I would say let's focus on a little area like that and hit it hard and see what happens.
Great.
It sounds like you're saying cat station. What station?
Cash.
Echo.
Oh, yes. On the road up to the ECFR.
So whoever
Yes.
wants to go up there and take a look at it with me, just let me know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great, that sounds great. Folks who are working on the blackberries, maybe you can follow up with Trevor, and you guys can find a time to go up there and look at it, maybe take some pictures, and we can talk about what we might want to do there. And then likewise, if you're working on another project or as these come up, let's just be looking for opportunities to see if, if there's a replanting or a beaver forage or something like that. Let's look for opportunities where we could also piggyback a monitoring of the blackberries and see if we can do some targeted work there too over the next time. Okay, great. Let's see, anything last, Barb, on beaver restoration? I don't know if I know there have been conversations, that were started prior to our kind of hiatus, and I don't know if any work's been done or you guys are aware of anything, but any updates there?
This is Les. The last update that I had was the Coastal Council meeting. And that subsequent to that, the fellow that runs that, Bob, you may help me with his name, I can't recall it, actually had a meeting with the city of Cannon Beach. He specifically mentioned Bruce, and I haven't heard, but I think that among the points that we're going to talk about was the update on the beaver survey that was recently done. I don't know if Bruce is still there. Maybe he could share if that meeting actually even happened.
Is it Barry Sims?
No, it was the fellow that runs I think it's the Coastal Council.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
We don't have a president at the moment, but
That's right.
the Northwest Watershed Association, I'm trying to think we have a new guy in charge of that who seems to be very good, but I can't pull up his name right now.
That's the person we met with.
Say again?
I just said I see Bruce is there. Do you have any updates, Bruce?
Yes, I don't recall the name either, but Bob,
His
that was
name is Graham.
Graham.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, we did have a meeting. There's been a grant. We're working on developing a grant proposal, and it goes back to the previous time that we went for a grant for beaver restoration. They kind of came out and said, it's really not broad enough. Really need to be thinking about doing more. And so we said, okay, well, now let's tell us about what it is that we need to be, what that might be. As part of that conversation, they said that, or one of the individuals said that there's actually the potential for some conflict between like the OWEB agreement and the ECFR plan and introducing beavers, is whether or not that's in there or not. So it just seemed that there was a lot of things that had to be sorted out before we could really be successful. And so what they decided on is and I'm not sure what the term is, but it's kind of an administrative review that they're doing as part of this grant. And so anyway, we met and we talked about what the parameters would be. It's really the first time we've met since the meeting we had that we decided that we needed to have some people help the city talk about what it is that we need to be doing to introduce people. I'm sorry. I don't know if accommodate or encourage is the right word for beavers.
My recollection, and this is going back maybe a couple of years or so, and I think it's something that we got through Karen, was that we had been notified by the state, and I don't remember even for sure whether it was Fish and Wildlife or whoever, that we should not take any actual action in that area without coordinating with them.
Yeah, and this meeting, there was one individual plus Graham, plus Karen, Trevor, and I. The previous meeting, it was like a big round table. It was held in this room. There was just a lot of people, and it was like, we're not ready yet. And so the idea was that we would do this one to get ready. And so anyway, it was the first follow-up we really had.
Good.
Thank you. And
Thank
then And then I didn't hear, is there additional meetings scheduled or follow-up planned?
Not at this time. I mean, there is a follow-up. I think Graham is going to be following up on some items. And then we'll be meeting again.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other?
Elaine?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, this is Les again. I didn't mean to interrupt. The other point that I recall was one of the things that, and I think his name was Graham, was looking for, and I think he probably brought it up when he met with Bruce and the others, was looking for historical beaver information regarding Ecola Creek. I don't know if that actually did come up or not, but I do know that was a desire on their part. Maybe it was in support of this grant request. I don't know. I had wondered if the Cannon Beach Museum, since they've got all of that digitized historical data, would be a source of anything like that. But about the time it occurred to me, Lorraine, or the lady that ran it, left, and so I haven't followed up on that. But if anyone knows of any historical beaver activity, blah blah blah, I suppose it would be of interest to us to know that. Thanks.
I can tell you, I have not spent much time in the reserve, but I have seen things that beavers have gnawed on, and at the in the tertiary treatment area next to the highway, which is along a tributary of the, or something of the creek, in the tertiary treatment area, as I saw a beaver dam a number of years back.
Can I say something? There's beaver activity in Little Pompey this past spring. There's beaver activity along Fifth Street between Haney property and Les Shirley Park, like 8 feet off the sidewalk. They've taken out a bunch of willows this big around. There's beaver activity at Ecola Creek Park. Mostly it's taking willow and swimming off with it. So there's beaver in the lower Ecola Creek, for sure.
What we're finding, there are beaver where we don't necessarily want beaver.
That's true too.
And so trying to find alternative locations, but they're finding areas that they want to be in. And those are areas that may be problematic for the city or for private property owners.
And I shared all my historical information I have with areas that I've seen beavers and also areas that I do not want to see beavers with this project.
Well, and you know, we can learn, I'm sure, just more generally. I know there are people who are very expert in this area, but seeing what they like and where they want to be, you know, is good information for us also as we're thinking about the reserve and how to support relocating or establishing, getting them happy and established there. Barb, I know you've been working on this a bunch over the years. Is there anything you want to add or thoughts before we kind of move forward?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we're, if the folks who are heading this up can stay in contact with staff and kind of apprised of the follow-up on the grant discussions, and we'll and then report back as we go forward. That would be great. Okay, and then I'm going to just, in the interest of time, ask that now that we've identified who's kind of working together on what, that you guys be in communication. And specifically, just, you know, if there are two people working on something, it's fine to communicate, but we've got to avoid, you know, having whole group emails or serial communication. So just do whatever research that you're working on for your topic, anything you have to bring back next time, and then we'll regroup together at our next meeting. Anything else, questions going forward on annual projects before we move on? Does everybody feel like they've got a foothold for a next step or something to be working on? Stacy's your hand, was that a hand? Oh, okay, great. Okay, perfect. Okay, Ecola Creek Forest Reserve. I think what we're doing at this point is primarily, we've got the projects that we've talked about, but also the OWEB review status. Do we have an update on that?
Yes, we had a phone call with OWEB and guy from Troutman.
Very simple.
Barry Sims. And Barry Sims. And after that call, we were setting up a contract with Barry to be the primary on all the contacts and the design, anything else that has to be put forward. And so that's where we stand at this time.
Has the plan update been approved, and has OWEB had any feedback on the plan? I think these are the things that would be relevant for the committee to be included in the loop. So has the plan been approved, and what is the status? If not, it would seem, I guess that's my first question.
No, but approved by who?
Well, OWEB would need to approve the
OWEB.
draft plan as submitted. And my question is, has OWEB approved the draft plan as submitted by the Parks Committee and with the initial approval of council? But that was a draft.
No, they have not.
Okay, so what are the contracts that are being discussed if the plan has not yet been approved?
That we will work with Barry, and Barry will work with OWEB on anything that they want to see worked on.
Are the contracts or the discussions specific to any particular project?
If they are specific to the entire plan.
Okay, so it is related to Barry being contracted with the city to be the person.
Our technical advisor and primary person they'll be talking to as far as the technical side.
Okay, but at this point, those contracts are not specific to any proposed project in the reserve. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Great, thanks. And then can we expect just update ongoing if OWEB has feedback on the plan, if there are discussions about that, and certainly if the approval comes through, how could we expect to see that? Would that be looped into emails or updated?
I'll do a progress report every month.
Okay, that sounds great. And if anything changes in between our meetings relative to the committee's work, to the plan, or to the approval or non-approval, will you notify, just let us know by email that there's something in process, so we have a heads up about it? Just something that, if there was something that would be important for us to know prior to the monthly update.
The direction that I have from the council is to work through with Barry and OWEB to get the plan to where they want to see it. And then at that time, it would be provided to the Parks Committee for review.
So I guess I just have a little, I'd like some clarification, because the plan update is the work product of the committee. We submitted that plan as the work of the committee. So if OWEB is requesting changes, or if there need to be revisions, my understanding is that would properly come back to the committee, and we would incorporate those and then resubmit that to council, as opposed to changes made by staff or some other entity. And I'd just like clarification on the process there, because it is the Parks Committee's responsibility to provide the plan update.
It is the Parks Department responsibility to provide a proposal to the council. Council has accepted it. That part is done. We've submitted to OWEB, and council has said that it will be city staff, Barry, and Ashley Driscoll will go through the conversations and complete the conversations with OWEB. And then at the end of that time, it'll be provided to the Parks Committee for their review. There is not an ongoing role for the Parks Committee in this right now.
Do we have, this is just going back, I think we've had one other round of this in terms of OWEB approving the original plan. And I don't know if OWEB had, gave feedback at that time or if there were iterations of that plan, but I'd just be curious to know what the process was then, just to understand kind of how that original plan update went, how the discussions with OWEB went, and then because I think it's important for us to be clear going forward. We're all relatively new in this 5-year review process. So that would be really helpful information to see kind of how that was handled last time and what the steps and the back and forth communication were. So I appreciate that. And
I will try to find that out, but right now there is a direction for this addition, if you want to call it.
yeah, great. I understand that, and I appreciate any information on how that was handled previously, and then we'll be able to have all that information available. Thank you. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. Anything else on Ecola Creek Forest Reserve? Okay, got that. Perfect. So good of the order.
I got something.
Okay.
The concert tonight, Paul Duber is looking to postpone it. He's monitoring the weather as we speak. If you want to know if the concert is going to go on tonight, you can monitor also Paul's Facebook page, or give him a text or give him a call.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks for following up. Thank you. I want to just quickly ask, since we're in this kind of blend of in-person and virtual worlds, and Kelsey, you can. I believe that the city's policy is that we're not provided with a phone number list, but I understand that folks may or may not have each other's phone numbers for doing their kind of research and partnering on projects. So is it agreeable to everyone that if somebody doesn't have somebody's phone number, they can contact me and I can provide that? Is everybody good with that? Just to another committee member?
That's fine with me.
Fine with
Yes.
me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I got yeses from everybody. Okay, great. So if there's a phone number of a committee member that you need, you can contact me and I will provide that to you directly, and then move forward.
You're welcome to give people both my home number and my cell number if you have them.
Okay.
If they want them.
I may not have that comprehensive a list, but that's great. Okay, thank you. And then just a heads up to everybody, I'm going to be gone in October. Barb will be sitting in, so just that's a little ways off, but I will be away that month.
Oh, yeah, the days.
Anything else for good of the order, or?
Yeah, I'll be gone in September. And so I'll do a double monthly State of the Parks report in October.
Okay, great. And everybody go look at the pickleball stripes. Woohoo!
Walk down the Orford access.
Oh, yeah, and the new beach taxes. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to look at. Thanks for all the great work, everybody. Let me know if you have questions, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Tulane. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Kurt.
Everybody.
Hi, Ellen.